Welcome in. This is Chiefs Chase. My name is Mike Bassano, and thank you so much for joining me here on the Offseason Check-In.
Couple of touchdowns, but 2 turnovers. And who's responsible for it? Luck wrapped up and sacked yet again. And it's the rookie, Chris Jones.
The Chiefs have a ton of offseason moves that have been happening, mostly re-signings, but there are a ton of storylines to get to as we sit here in the middle of March, leading into what should be, I think, a fantastic 2025 season. And I don't care what all those people out there have to say, what all those national media people have to say, what all those clowns that call themselves credible have to say. And I'll explain why here in a moment, because this offseason reminds me of another very pivotal Chiefs offseason. We'll explain why all that's coming up here in just a moment. But first, let's talk about this absurd narrative that the Chiefs' downfall will be in 2025. Here we go again. Every year this happens. Everybody's got to come out of the woodwork and go, well, on paper, I think the Chiefs got a little bit worse. Ooh, look, they didn't get a lot in free agency. It feels like a bad movie that's just been on repeat for years and years and years. Since when do good franchises that win championships build through free agency? You supplement through free agency, but look at what the Chiefs have done in the draft. Look at all the guys they've had to re-sign, the guys they've restructured, like Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Trent McDuffie and Nick Bolton and Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. I'm just going to keep naming off guys that Brett Veach has drafted that ended up becoming superstars, so you can sit there and keep worrying about free agency, because I don't care. I'm not worried about it. You know what I'm worried about? I'm worried about making sure that the Chiefs have another phenomenal draft to supplement a few areas where they need some help. And by the way, they did go get an offensive tackle in free agency. Was it a big splash signing? No, but the fact is the Chiefs don't really need a big splash signing. They just need somebody who can protect Patrick Mahomes. And if they believe that Jalen Moore is the guy that can step in and protect Patrick Mahomes, then yes, the Chiefs have made a big splash in free agency. You don't have to have the huge name. You don't need to get DK Metcalf and all of his attitude in Kansas City in order to have a better football team. You just go get an offensive lineman that you think can protect Patrick Mahomes. And if Jalen Moore is that guy, and the Chiefs clearly believe that Jalen Moore is that guy, well, then the Chiefs already won free agency, because when you have a team that's defending AFC champions, the idea that they would have to go out and break the bank, it's absurd. But this happens every single year. People say, well, the Chiefs didn't do enough in free agency, and then the Chiefs draft 5 stars in the draft. That's how it works. People complain about free agency. Look, I complain about free agency sometimes. I'm right there with you. I go, oh, it's not enough. Oh, I don't like this. Oh, I wish they would have gotten this guy. And then Brett Veach finds 2 guys I've never heard of in the 4th and 5th round, and suddenly L'Jarius Sneed is your best cornerback right in his rookie year. So that's what the Chiefs have done, and I think at this point, you have to take a step back and go, okay, look at the history of Brett Veach. Look at the history of the Chiefs in this era, the Mahomes era of Kansas City, where they build up stars on that defense. The secondary, yeah, I like Justin Reed too. We all want Justin Reed to be in Kansas City forever, but the history of the Kansas City Chiefs secondary tells us that they can draft. Every time Brett Veach drafts a big-time secondary player, he hits. Trent McDuffie, boom. L'Jarius Sneed. But the list goes on. Jalen Watson. I mean, we'll just keep going through the list if you want to. But the fact is, the Chiefs have built that secondary through the draft for a long time. And it's been incredibly successful. So I have no reason to sit here and worry about what Brett Veach is doing with this team. Especially not in free agency, because there's no history of the Chiefs going in free agency and making huge splashes. Even the Hollywood Brown signing, while exciting, wasn't a massive splash. It wasn't DK Metcalf. It wasn't T. Higgins. It wasn't one of those top flight guys that people say should be a top tier wide receiver and a clear cut number 1. But the question is, do you need a clear-cut number 1? When you have Rashee Rice coming back from injury, an injury he sustained fairly early in the Kansas City Chiefs 2024 season. So you have Rashee Rice coming back. You have Xavier Worthy coming into his second season as a pro. He's going to be really solid. Now, if you could have gone and gotten T. Higgins, that would have been fine, but you can't. And we'll explain why T. Higgins not coming to Kansas City is totally fine because of what his contract does to the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll dive deeper into that. But the fact is, the Chiefs don't need to go make big splashes in free agency because they're defending AFC champions. The Chiefs have the Lamar Hunt Trophy sitting at One Arrowhead Drive in its rightful home as AFC champions. So this idea that the Kansas City Chiefs have to go out and make these big splash signings or big splash trades, it's just not true. They already have a dynamic team full of stars and a history of being able to build that team through the draft. So with everything Brett Veach has given Kansas City and given the Chiefs since taking over as general manager, it's a little absurd to me that people are already starting to write off the Kansas City Chiefs for 2025 because they didn't make enough free agency splashes. Is there anything more lame media than that, where they're like, oh, they didn't draft this guy, or they didn't sign a big name enough for us, so this must be the fall-off year for Kansas City. It happens every year, and it never actually falls off. So let them yap, let them talk. That's all they do. And they continue to talk nonsense that they're going to have to walk back in about 6 months. They always do it. They talk this nonsense, and then come November-ish, they're going to go, well, maybe the Chiefs were a little bit better than we thought. Or they're going to be the bigger clowns that we all see that go, well, the Chiefs are really frauds. They're helped out by the referees. They win one-score games. They're not going to do that again. Every year we see this, and every year the Chiefs prove them wrong, and Brett Veach makes everybody who signs big-name free agents look like idiots because no matter how many people you get, Buffalo with Stephon Diggs, it doesn't end up beating the Chiefs in the playoffs. So keep talking. Keep going. On paper, they're worse? Define worse for me. Define to me how the Chiefs got worse, because they got Jalen Moore on the offensive line. They traded Joe Thuney, but they're going to get a pick for that next year. But they feel like they have enough guys on the interior line that Joe Thuney won't be much of a loss. And then when you add another tackle to step in and help protect Patrick Mahomes, that's good stuff. Now you're getting Rashee Rice back. You're getting Hollywood Brown back. Kareem Hunt, Juju Smith-Schuster. Oh yeah, Xavier Worthy, one of the most dynamic weapons in the NFL last season, is going into just his second year for the Kansas City Chiefs, so he can build even more chemistry with Patrick Mahomes. So you look at what the reality of this roster is. Oh, and the defense? Yes, losing Justin Reed isn't fun, but Brett Veach has proven he can build the secondary through the draft, re-sign Nick Bolton, restructure Chris Jones. You still have George Karlaftis. You have a litany of stars, Trent McDuffie, all over that Chiefs defense. So you don't really need to worry about losing one guy when the team is filled with stars. People want to build up this narrative that the Chiefs somehow got carried all the way to the Super Bowl. No, the Chiefs got beat in the Super Bowl. Frankly, I think the pressure probably got on them a little bit. But to use that as some sort of justification for the Chiefs being carried by the refs or for Patrick Mahomes being overrated is absolutely insane and just shows how stupid you truly are as a human being. Because what the Chiefs accomplished last year was going through a gauntlet of getting everybody's best shot, going for the first three-peat in NFL history. And they went further than anyone in history. And I think when they got to the Super Bowl, that long layoff between the having to talk to the media, dealing with all the hate during media day, and really seeing how much the entire public had turned on the Kansas City Chiefs, I think the pressure got to them. It looked like it. They came out flat, came out uninspired. Travis Kelce had maybe his worst game we've ever seen, especially in the Super Bowl. For the Super Bowl, for sure. For the Super Bowl, Kelce played worse than he ever has. So a lot of these guys, I think the pressure mounted on them a little bit. They came out. The Eagles were hungry. The Eagles also had the best top-to-bottom roster in the NFL. And then Nick Sirianni had a better game plan than Andy Reid. That's what happened in the Super Bowl. So this narrative that the Chiefs have somehow gotten all the way to the Super Bowl because they were carried by the refs is just something trolls and morons say because they have no idea what's actually going on in the world and they can't dissect a football game to save their lives. So I'm not going to hear it.
Otherwise, they're trying to draw them offsides.
Well, they're going for it. Here's Mahomes rolling out. It's wide open over there, and he slides for the first down. They had both Pacheco and Hunt.
Now, the Chiefs have been so dominant that something has happened that we have never seen, not in the history of the NFL. We'll tell you what that is coming up here in just a few minutes. But first, the offseason. This offseason reminds me of a very specific offseason for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is 2022 all over again, where the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill and everybody left them for gone. They said these guys are finished. They were picked to finish dead last in the AFC West in 2022 because, this is a rebuilding year for the Chiefs. They traded away Tyreek Hill. On paper, this team just isn't what they've been in the past couple of years. And what happened in 2022? The Chiefs won the Super Bowl. Because that's what the Kansas City Chiefs do. You don't have to have all these guys that the media tells you have to have because the NFL builds stars, right? It's marketing. All these big stars, these big names, these guys that you think, you got to go get DK Metcalf. You got to go get this guy or that guy. It's just names that were built up by the media. And while they're incredibly talented players, the idea that you can't win without them is just flat out wrong. And that's what we're dealing with right now for the Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of people who are flat out wrong, just like they were in 2022. You want to take these small offseason moves and go, okay, well, now we know because of what we see on paper, what the Kansas City Chiefs will be. Well, you know what I see on paper? I see Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco, Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Chris Jones, Nick Bolton, George Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie, and I'm not even mentioning everybody. So what I see on paper is a dynamic team filled with stars that other NFL teams would do anything to get, but they can't. Anybody would love to have Chris Jones. Anybody would love to have Nick Bolton. Anybody would love to have Trent McDuffie. That's 3 levels of defense where the Chiefs have players that are legitimate big-time stars. And not to mention, the secondary is a place where Brett Veach has proven that he can develop and draft stars instantly. Guys who come in their rookie year and make a big-time impact. He's done it his entire career in Kansas City. So the idea that the Chiefs don't have enough just isn't true. It's just a bunch of people who don't really understand what they're talking about, blowing something out of proportion because they want the clicks. But it's not the truth. I just named off all those stars. Go to another team and find more stars other than the Philadelphia Eagles. But they're losing a lot too, by the way. The Philadelphia Eagles lost a ton of stars because you can't have a roster that's that dominant for a long period of time. It's just not possible. But you have to have cornerstones. And at every single spot, the Chiefs have cornerstones. I didn't even mention Kareem Hunt yet or Hollywood Brown. And we'll get to those guys. Or Juju Smith-Schuster. We'll get to those guys here in a little bit because I think those are big re-signings. But the fact is the Kansas City Chiefs have a litany of stars across the board on their team and on their roster. Whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's the players, across the board, the Chiefs have superstars because we haven't even talked about Andy Reid or Steve Spagnuolo. There's a lot of pieces in Kansas City that tell me not only is this dynasty not done, this dynasty's just getting started. Patrick Mahomes can play for another 10 years, and as long as you have number 15 at quarterback, this dynasty is far from over. As long as you have Andy Reid at head coach and Steve Spagnuolo at defensive coordinator, this dynasty is far from over. So this feels so much like 2022 again, where people want to write off the Chiefs. Go ahead. Do it. Write off the Chiefs. Please be my guest. And then tell me how they're frauds or they're being helped by the referees or you were just wrong 6 months from now. Because that's what always happens. 6 months from now, all of these people, the Colin Cowherds of the world, the Rob Parkers of the world, talk more about him later. What a douche. Those guys always end up coming back and going, well, the Chiefs actually played just a little bit better than we thought, or they're winning a lot of close games, or they make excuses and say they're frauds. It's just what these people do when they're wrong. And the reason why people slandered the Chiefs every single year, we're seeing it right now. Because they start out in March going, well, on paper, they're not as good as they were last year. And then 6 months from now, the Chiefs are going to be dominating the AFC West like they always do. And these same people that are currently saying the Chiefs aren't going to be good are going to find excuses. It might be the referees. It might be that Patrick Mahomes is overrated. It might be a fact that they say it's just close games and the Chiefs are fraudulent. No matter what it is, no matter what excuse they find, they will absolutely find one in 6 months to cover their terrible take of today, saying that the Chiefs are falling off in 2025. I promise you this will happen because it happens every year. Bunch of clowns. Now, also, there are certain things, like when I see people pick Kansas City to finish fourth in the AFC West, or they pick them to no longer dominate the AFC West, they're not thinking that. Like, I don't think Colin Cowherd really thinks that the Chiefs are going to fall off in 2025 and not win the AFC West. I think he hopes the Chiefs are going to fall off in 2025 and not win the AFC West. I think people are just so tired of the dominance that they're going to find any motion that they can, anything that they can point out to say this is why the Chiefs are going to lose, because they're hoping that the Chiefs are going to lose. They don't think it, they hope it. And it's a very distinct difference. Now, one of the most shocking moves of the NFL offseason impacts the Chiefs 100%. We'll tell you what that is coming up here in just a few minutes. But the Chiefs are so dominant that the AFC West has had to assemble the Avengers just to try to stop them. The Broncos got Sean Payton. The Chargers got Jim Harbaugh. And the Raiders got Pete Carroll. Never in the NFL have we seen so many championship caliber coaches in one division just to stop one singular team. Give the Patriots all the credit you want to, but the AFC East never looked like this. They never had to go through Jim Harbaugh. They never had to go through Sean Payton. They never had to go through Pete Carroll. They had a bunch of scrubs. The best coach in the entire run of the AFC East for the New England Patriots was Rex Ryan, who was not a championship caliber coach. So you can look around, but you want to know how big and how great the Chiefs dynasty has been? Look at what the rest of the AFC West has had to do to try to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They've had to whip out the biggest checks they've ever written to try to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And the punchline of all of it? They won't. The Chiefs will still win the AFC West. The Raiders will still be irrelevant. The Chargers will still underperform. And the Broncos will still be a nice team that people kind of like but really can't do anything. Because that's the way it works. So you can put together all the great coaches you want to. It doesn't matter. They're not going to knock the Chiefs off the top of the mountain because they can't. Things in motion tends to stay in motion, right? Now, not if you listen to the national media. They're always looking for what's going to change. But I'm telling you, the most stacked coaching division filled with the most champions in the history of football, all just to stop the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm a little flattered by it, but I'm also like, God dang, you got to make it that hard? We would like an easier. I want Gary Kubiak back in Denver. Where were those days? Remember Kubiak there? Pretty good offensive mind, I think, right? I was just saying. Good coordinator, bad head coach deal. We need more of those because now you can't point at anybody in the AFC West and say they have a bad head coaching situation. Not one team. There is no other division in the NFL where that's a thing you could say. Where you could say there's no other division in the NFL where you could say they have great coaches across the board, potential Hall of Fame coaches across the board, except for the AFC West. And frankly, I don't think there's a time in NFL history you could say that, except for now in the AFC West. That's how hard people have tried to beat the Chiefs, to knock the Chiefs off the mountain, and they still haven't been able to do it. So we're watching all these big-time head coaches get crazy money just to come to AFC West and try to stop the Kansas City Chiefs. If this were the NBA, they would have blocked it. Because they say, no, that's not, we have a competition committee and all that stupid crap they do in that league. But this is the NFL, where you got to win by any means necessary. And clearly, that's what the AFC West is trying to do. Because they're so tired of getting buried. Punchline, once again, the punchline is, you're going to keep being tired. Because you're going to keep getting buried by the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, there's a take around the NFL about Andy Reid that I got to tell you, it's the worst take in the history of sports. I'm being 1,000% honest. There's no hyperbole there. The take going around the league about Andy Reid from one of the dumbest people in the history of media, and this should tell you everything you need to know about media because this man has been employed by everybody. We'll get to it here in just a second. Worst take in the history of sports. But first, one of the most shocking moves of the NFL offseason does impact the Chiefs 100% because T. Higgins and Jamar Chase just sealed the Bengals never being a contender again. I mean, at least Buffalo waits until the playoffs to blow the season. The Bengals blow the season during the offseason. It's March. It's March and the Bengals blew the season. You're going to pay 3 guys all that money and leave nothing for everybody else? Here's what happened. Joe Burrow went to management and he was like, hey, I like my guys. I like Jamar Chase. I like T. Higgins. So now you have the Bengals commit all of their money to 3 players so Joe Burrow can have his guys around him. And now that's going to be the reason why they score 35 points a game and end up 9-8 at best. You have to have a defense. I mean, last year the Bengals scored 30 points per game and didn't even make the playoffs. This ridiculous idea of needing 2 number 1 wide receivers for Joe Burrow, it tells me maybe the Bengals don't believe in Joe Burrow that much. And frankly, maybe they're letting him call too many shots because that is not a championship decision. I was hoping the Chiefs could go get T. Higgins for a price, but in no world did I expect the Bengals to be this stupid. Not in a million years did I expect the Bengals to be so dumb to commit this kind of money to their number 2 wide receiver, T. Higgins. Yeah, he's number 1 caliber, but he is their number 2 option. So that kind of money for a number 2 option when you're paying Jamar the amount you're paying him? Thank you, Bengals organization. Thank you, because you had a really good chance to be a great contender in the NFL this year. Really go for a Super Bowl and get back to the glory that you were just a few years ago when Joe Burrow was very young, and you blew it. So now we don't even have to worry about the Bengals. All the rivalry feelings that I have for the Bengals have kind of gone away because I'm really pity you now. As an organization and as a fan base, I pity you because you've already thrown away your season for really the next few years. And it's March. Now, Bengals or Giants? Whose front office? We'll move on in a second, but it's a good question. Bengals or Giants? Whose front office is worse? One of them. It's got to be one of them. Bengals or Giants? Who has the more atrocious front office? I think I'm leaning toward Giants because even with the deals that the Bengals made, as bad as they are, at least they didn't give away Saquon Barkley instead of paying him less money than they just paid Darius Slayton. My head exploded. The Giants, not only did they trade away Saquon Barkley, they essentially gave their division rival a Super Bowl. Let's put this in Chiefs terms. Imagine if the Chiefs decided to trade their best player, let's call it Patrick Mahomes because that is the best player. Let's say they trade him to the Raiders because they think this guy's just a little over the hill. We don't think he's worth the money he's asking. And then Patrick Mahomes takes the Raiders to a Super Bowl while you're in the toilet. That is what happened last year for the New York Giants. So as bad as the Bengals are in management, at least they're not as bad as the Giants. There is nobody that can come for that crown. That's an unbelievable disaster that the Giants have created there in New York. It's almost shocking that it's even real. Like it's one of those things where you think that can't be a real thing, right? No, it can't be that bad. Also, off-season Hard Knocks, never again. Never going to live down your son creating a championship team right in your ear. Re-sign Saquon Barkley, trade up and go get Jalen Daniels. Had they done that, we're talking about a potential Super Bowl in New York last year. Instead, they did what they thought was the safe option, and it blew up in their face. I think we're going to see crazy amounts of trades in this draft because of that. I think in the upcoming NFL draft, and we'll do a show before the draft. I'm doing a lot of other stuff right now, entertainment-wise, but this show happens forever. I've told you that from the very beginning. No matter what happens in entertainment world in my life, I'm booking a lot of stuff right now, but no matter what happens, this show maintains. No matter what contract I sign, no matter what I do, this show happens forever. Dead serious. The goal is if I could just make enough money outside of the show that I never have to monetize this, that would be amazing. Because I do this for the love, man. I do this because I love doing it. You know, I don't like the whole corporatization of it. I've done the corporate talk show before. Don't even like it. I really don't. I've done the corporate talk show for 8 years? I did 8 or 9 years doing this job professionally. And you know what? You start to say dumb stuff after a while when you do it so much, when you're on the air all the time. I did it 4 hours a day for years, you know, in different markets all around the country, including Kansas City for 2 years with 610 Sports Radio, which is now 96.5 The Fan. It's a lot. And you're just doing it all day long. And it's like, you know, you start saying stuff. And we'll get to something somebody said here in just a moment. But point is, when the draft comes around, we will have a draft show. And I think we're going to see more trades than we've ever seen before, sparked a lot by what people think, if that's your guy, give up everything to go get him. Because had the Giants done that for Jaden Daniels, as the GM's son wanted him to do, it would have been a gangbusters win for the Giants. So that's going to let people go a little bit more creative this year. And I think the Chiefs could trade up. I do. I'm really interested to see what happens in the draft this year. But we'll dive into that on the draft show coming up in just a couple of weeks, or maybe a few weeks right before the draft happens. Now, there's a distinct reason why the Chiefs have been so good for so long in this era. We'll get to it in just a moment. But first, the worst take in the history of sports is about Andy Reid. But before we get to that horrible take, the NFL released this today called Coach Core. Either way, it's just a cool video about Andy Reid. That's awesome. We show that amazing video because we want to show you something great about Andy Reid to remind you how lucky Kansas City is to have Andy Reid. Remember the year before Andy Reid, the 2-14 Romeo Crennel, Scott Pioli effing disaster year? Yeah, let's go back to that, remember that, and then be very grateful for Andy Reid as I tell you the worst take in the history of sports. Rob Parker, who should have been fired 15 years ago for racist comments about Robert Griffin III, has made a comment about Andy Reid that I can't believe. He said that Andy Reid should step down as head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs because of how bad his game plan was in the Super Bowl. And it's not just about one game, it's a fall off for Andy Reid, is what Rob Parker had to say. Rob Parker should have been fired a long time ago, and you want to talk, I'll put it this way, you want to talk bad about podcasters? Rob Parker is an employed media member by ABC Detroit and has contributed to both Fox Sports and ESPN. This man is a solidified media member, all the credentials, and he thinks Andy Reid should step down as the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs? I never want to hear a bad thing about social media people ever again versus the national media, because never in my life have I opened up my phone, scrolled through an Instagram or TikTok, and seen anything as stupid as what Rob Parker says on national television. So if you think Andy Reid should step down, then you should probably stop talking, because that means you have no idea how football works, no idea how the Kansas City Chiefs work, and no idea how Andy Reid grabbed this franchise that was given to him by Clark Hunt and took it to the top with all of his brilliant decision making. And if you don't understand and appreciate that, then I think you have a very large piece of your brain just flat out missing. And if it turns out that Rob Parker has CTE or something, I'll be very sad for him, but it would also make a lot of sense, because nobody with their right functioning brain could ever say that Andy Reid should step down as head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. In fact, if it were up to me, we would have doctors working around the clock to try to find some kind of fountain of youth so that Andy Reid could keep coaching the Kansas City Chiefs for the rest of eternity, because that's how amazing Andy Reid has been for the Kansas City Chiefs and for Kansas City as a whole. And anyone who believes otherwise just because he got out game planned in one game by Nick Sirianni, hey, hats off to Sirianni. If you think that means that Andy Reid should step down, you're wrong. Sometimes you'll lose, guys. Like, that happens. I hate this idea that when somebody loses, they did something wrong. Sometimes, yeah, you did something wrong. And the Chiefs in that game, they came out, they looked flat. I think the pressure got to them. And the game plan, it wasn't that great. And Nick Sirianni definitely was ready for the Chiefs. I don't know that the Chiefs were ready for Nick Sirianni. And as much as I talked about Nick Sirianni before the game, and by the way, another thing about the national media, they wiped their posts so much so you can't go back and look at their old terrible takes. I wipe nothing. So when I sat there and said Nick Sirianni's inability to control his emotions will be the downfall of the Eagles and why they lose the Super Bowl, I was 1,000% wrong.
Minutes of this game. Pressure from Brandon Graham. Mahomes racing away from him. Throws on the run across his body. It is caught for the touchdown. Worthy. And the Chiefs are finally on the board.
I left it up. I'll take the heat. I don't care. I gotta sit here worried about what everybody thinks of me. God, how bad would I be at this if I did? Now, I see a lot of people that do, that make a lot of money doing this, by the way. And they care so much about what everybody thinks, and they change their takes to be populists, and they sound insanely stupid every single time I listen to them. So here's the deal. Losing one game, getting outcoached, outplayed, outprepared. Look, the Chiefs lost in every conceivable way in that Super Bowl. It happens. Sometimes your game plan doesn't work. You didn't do enough, and you end up losing. And that's something that the Chiefs have to live with. That's something Andy Reid has to live with. Patrick Mahomes' performance is something he has to live with. Travis Kelce has to carry around that performance for the rest of the offseason. The Chiefs losing that game hurts, but the idea there should be any changes whatsoever based on one Super Bowl where the Chiefs were trying to achieve the first three-peat in the history of the NFL, it's insanely stupid by every objective measure. But that's what the national media has become. Insanely stupid by every objective measure. Anything else on this? Nope. That's all we needed. Now, the Chiefs have their biggest issue heading into 2025. We'll tell you what that is and how they can potentially fix it coming up here in a few minutes. But first, this is a thing where people freak out about the Chiefs not doing anything in free agency. It feels like this annual thing where people lose it because the Chiefs didn't do enough, with rare exception. The Chiefs are not a free agent franchise, which is why they win championships. Great teams throughout history, they're built throughout the draft. And then you supplement them with guys like Kareem Hunt, guys like Hollywood Brown. You bring in people that can help supplement. But the reality is, the stars of the Kansas City Chiefs are built through the draft. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco, Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Chris Jones, Nick Bolton, George Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie. I could just keep naming off guys who are legitimate NFL stars that the Kansas City Chiefs drafted. So you should expect the Chiefs to not make some huge splash in free agency. Hey, they went and got a tackle. He might be all right. You know, that's the thing. When you go out and you get somebody, you have to realize you're just supplementing. Champions are built through the draft, and the Chiefs have been building through the draft for years. That's what makes them a champion. And you can sit there and go, why didn't they get this guy? Why didn't they get that guy? I did that. I'm not better. Like, I'm not sitting there going, people just don't understand. No, I feel the same way during free agency, but I have the wherewithal and the understanding of history for the Kansas City Chiefs to know that what they do in free agency, not that important. Because they've never been big splash and free agency team. They've been a build through the draft team, and they've been a dynasty for the last 5-6 years. So a team that's been a dynasty for 6 years builds through the draft, not through free agency. So why should we expect them to make any big splashes in free agency? Look, I wanted one. I wanted a big splash. Everybody wants the big splash in free agency, but when you don't get it, you just go, okay. You have to have that level of in reach we trust. And I think that's incredibly important for the Kansas City Chiefs. Because, like, would you expect a team to fall off? Like, that's the thing. You expect a team with all those stars to fall off? No. But why would Brett Veach, would he be good at his job if all Brett Veach did was go out and try to find the biggest name free agent and sign him? No, he'd be like Jerry Jones. And Jerry's actually gotten better at that, to his credit. But remember when Jerry Jones would just go get the highest price free agent every single year? Never worked for him. Even Jerry realized that that's a terrible way to try to build a championship franchise. It took him about a decade, but he figured it out. So this idea that the Chiefs should go get the big, high-price free agent guy, they shouldn't. How are the Dolphins working out? Right? They traded for Tyreek Hill, gave him insane money. How's that going? Have they won a playoff game? Nope. Have they been to the playoff? Well, they must have been to the playoffs, right? Every year since Tyreek? Nope. So every measure that we have shows you that the big name free agent, the big time free agent that everybody wants, is not the key to winning a championship. Very rarely it can happen. Peyton Manning, great example. Rarely it can happen, but most of the time, the vast majority of the time, you build through the draft to win championships, and that's what Kansas City does. And the Chiefs also have some big-time players returning from last year. We'll get to those guys here in just a moment. But first, the number one biggest issue the Chiefs have heading into 2025 is the offensive line. Now, they've added a piece, but I think Moore is good. Like, Moore's a solid player, but, you know, who knows how good he'll be? We don't know. right? He's got to fit into the system. He's got to fit into the blocking scheme. The Chiefs believe that Moore fits. We'll see. However, I think at this point, you're hoping Kingsley and Morris can grow into it, right? Last year, Wanya Morris, just a second-year guy. Kingsley, just a rookie. You're hoping those two guys can really get into the weight room in the offseason. Like, I don't know. Wanya Morris looks like he's seen the inside of a McDonald's a lot more than he's seen the inside of a weight room. You got to get the 1990s Husker power into him. And I don't care if it comes with little steroids. I never do. Just don't get caught. The fact is, Wanya Morris stands out there, and I think I've seen Wanya Morris in line at McDonald's. I see that build more at McDonald's than I ever do on a football field. I'm just saying. That's the absolute truth. You look at guys and you go, wow, that guy, Willie Roaf. Did Willie Roaf ever look like a guy who was just hanging out in McDonald's, or did he look like a beast? You know, you want to build yourself into a beast. You want to be that guy. You got to put in the work. You can't come out there looking out of shape and expect to be a great left tackle. You got to move too much at left tackle to come in out of shape. You got to make sure you have that limber lower body along with the big upper body that can punch. That's the whole point of left tackle. And Wanya Morris looks like the opposite of that. He looks like a guy that's got way too much in the lower and not enough in the upper. So if Wanya Morris gets into the weight room, loses some of that weight on the lower body, keeps it strong, and then builds some of that weight in the upper body so we can punch on passing downs, then we could see Wanya Morris make a big leap. Because I think a lot of what Wanya has is a physical inability that if you get him in the weight room and make him look physically better, I think Wanya Morris could be a really good left tackle. But that's the thing. These guys, they have so many young guys on the offensive line that I think the move is going to have to be to develop those guys, develop Morris and Kingsley. Because those are the two guys that I think they want to invest in. They were both second-round picks. Last year was Wanya's second year and Kingsley's first year. So this is the make or break year for Wanya Morris, because really by the third year for an offensive tackle, you should at the very least be good. And if you're not, sayonara. Kingsley, he's got another year until that, but I hope to see some significant improvement because last year's offensive line wasn't good enough. Not just in the Super Bowl. We talked about it on this show all year long. They couldn't protect Patrick Mahomes, which is why they had to move Tooney outside. They went through 4 left tackles last season, 2 of them benched because of bad performances. That can't happen again. So hopefully, guys like Wanya Morris and Kingsley can come in and play at a high level, because last year that was so hard to watch. You got to get in the weight room. You have to have more agility, and you have to be better at punching, especially Wanya Morris. Kingsley looked like he had no idea what was happening on the field, so I can't even tell what his problem is. He's got to get up to snuff when it comes to the mental side of the game before we can even really dissect what he does anything else, because watching Kingsley last year, he looked lost. So that's the biggest issue for the Chiefs coming into this year. Skill player-wise, defense-wise, it all looks good. If there's a good offensive line, average offensive line, the Chiefs will be another contender. They'll be a contender for the Super Bowl next year without question. And that's what we're looking for the Chiefs.
In Kansas City history, Mahomes, flip it, catch, Juju Smith-Schuster dives for the score. Touchdown, Chiefs.
Now, finally, to end things here on Chiefs Chase, we got to talk about Hollywood Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kareem Hunt. 3 guys that are definitely fan favorites that I think will have a dynamic impact on this team. And I was so happy when we saw Kareem Hunt, the juggernaut, the battering ram, Kareem Hunt, coming back to Kansas City. That was so exciting for me because I think Kareem Hunt could be that guy to help elevate this team. A lot of people forget last year in the first half of the season when the Chiefs passing game was non-existent because nobody could block for Patrick Mahomes, Kareem Hunt was just firing through the center of the offensive line every single play, battering ram into the defense and keeping drives alive. Sometimes carrying the ball 26 times a game, coming off of an offseason where he didn't even have a team. So this guy came off the couch and really put the offense on his shoulders a few times. So with Kareem Hunt having that ability to carry the offense, and then you bring in Hollywood Brown, then you bring in Juju Smith-Schuster. All right. That's a pretty good nucleus when you add in, of course, Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy on the field at the same time is a speed machine, dude. And then you have Juju Smith-Schuster, who's a really nice possession receiver now. I really like the wide receiver core for the Kansas City Chiefs. I do. Would I have liked it more with T. Higgins? Sure. But the Bengals are stupid. Nothing we can do about it. But I really like the passing weapons that Mahomes has, especially if Rashee Rice can come back with the same explosiveness that he had before, which I know is tough. I know that's a big if. But if Rashee Rice comes back and it looks like he hasn't missed a step, Chiefs are coming, baby. They are coming. And then Hollywood Brown. His ability was, I think, almost instantly impactful last year. That's why I was so excited to see Hollywood Brown coming back. When he was healthy last season, I know he's got to stay healthy, but when he was healthy last year, Hollywood Brown made a significant and immediate impact on that offense, opening up things for everybody while being a slicer through the center of the defense. What Hollywood Brown does is so incredibly important to this team. And with him coming back for the 2025 season, I think the Chiefs passing offense has everything it needs, provided that the offensive line can at least do an average job of protecting Patrick Mahomes. So there we go. That's Chiefs Chase, the off-season check-in. Thank you so much, you guys, for watching. I really appreciate it. I love you guys. You're incredible, and I enjoy doing this show so much, so I'm just going to keep doing it. I appreciate those of you who keep tuning in, even though it's the off-season. I know people aren't as engaged, but if you are still engaged, you're awesome. I love you, and I'm not going anywhere ever. Thank you so much. This has been the Chiefs Chase off-season check-in. I don't know when we'll have another one. Could be a couple weeks, could be a few weeks. Maybe a month. I don't know. It depends on scheduling, but definitely before the draft, which is when it's important, right? Definitely before the NFL draft, we will have another show. We'll break down who the Chiefs should take, and I'm sure there will be other storylines as well. Quick mention before I get out of here. I did not mention the Xavier Worthy arrest at any time on social media, anywhere. I hate the fact that people immediately take an arrest and work it for clicks. That's what happened in this country. Like, you know how people are like, oh, you're guilty until proven innocent. Yeah, that's for clicks. You're guilty until proven innocent because that's what's better for clicks. You'll get a lot more people looking at your story if you just post the accusation and you just go, and you treat it as if it happened. You're going to get more viewers, you're going to get more clicks, you're going to get more everything. So that's why the society is the way it is. It's not that hard. By the way, I've been through media training. I know why they do it. It's because it's a ratings boost. That's what media is there for. It's not there to give you the truth. It's there for a ratings boost. So when Xavier Worthy got arrested, and then, of course, charges were dropped, I never said a word because I don't care about somebody getting arrested. I did think, hey, a wide receiver got arrested. The offseason's officially here. But in this situation, I always wait and see because I don't think it's fair for me to sit here and be like, oh, man, Xavier Worthy got arrested. Let's talk. Like, let it play out. Then I can talk about it. And that's the nice thing about me not actually working in the media. I don't have to play by the same rules. So I can promise you, no matter what happens from this point going forward, if somebody gets arrested or something like that happens, I will be the one to wait because I'm not about to sit here and slander somebody or try to make somebody look bad off an accusation that I don't know if it's true. I wasn't there. Rashee Rice is a little different because we saw videos, so in a way we were there, right? With Xavier Worthy or anything like that, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, and I'm going to wait until the facts come out before I say a word about it. That is my promise to you. All right, thank you guys so much. You're amazing. I love you. Have a fantastic rest of March if I don't see you again, and thank you for watching me here on Chiefs Chase.